Hello and welcome to another episode of the Average Joe Football Show. I'm your host, Joe Fair. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Cardi B and Offset's Divorce Lawyers' favorite football podcast. Yeah, that's right.
That's your best one.
Thank you. Trying to be with the times with these references. For some reason, and I don't know why, my Twitter decided to send me a notification that Cardi B and Offset are getting a divorce. Actually,
Okay, but I thought they already were gonna do that a while ago.
well, your guess is as good as mine. I honestly didn't even know that they were married before this.
yeah, I knew that.
Really?
At least I knew that.
Yeah, you're all in on the pop culture and all that.
Not
so.
necessarily, but
Well, more so than me, I'd say. But yeah, rest in peace to Cardi B and Offset's marriage. For those of you that don't know who they are, who cares? It doesn't really matter. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. That was one way to start the show. Joe, we actually, for the very first time on this podcast, who thought we'd ever get here? We actually have real football games. You didn't, you liar. You did not think that we would get here.
No.
We're here talking about football, and we actually have real football to talk about. All 32 teams played a game at some point this last week, and boy, did it feel good to have football back, despite there not being fans at a lot of these games. Most of the games, I believe there was only 2, maybe 3 games where fans were actually allowed this week, but it was still just so good to have football back. Thursday, obviously, was the first game of the season between the Chiefs and the Texans, and we're going to get into all the games at some point. No news today. We're not going to go through a news roundup. There was a bunch of contract extensions. We saw Jalen Ramsey get a contract extension, and a bunch of people sign contract extensions. What's that, Joe?
Oh, what about did my man Matt Gay find a team, find
Matt
a job?
Gay?
Yeah.
I'm actually not. I don't think so, but you can look that up if you want at some
Good,
point.
I dropped him already.
You dropped him? Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I took
Matt
someone
Gay,
else.
listen, it's his favorite podcast. Matt Gay, if you're listening to this, you're gonna find a home, man. You're gonna find home. There's a
You'll
lot
be
of
employed.
kickers that struggled this weekend. Adam Vinatieri will get not Adam Vinatieri, he's a free agent. The other guy, Steven Gostkowski, the other former New England kicker, missed 4 kicks in one game.
No.
Yeah, for the Tennessee Titans. We'll get into that obviously later on into the episode. But before we start, obviously we're so excited to talk football. Finally have football to talk about. And what happens the day that we're going to record the very first week 1 recap, I come down with a little bit of an illness.
A little bit of a COVID-19.
A little bit of a COVID-19. This is actually COVID. Yeah. Blair horn action, baby. COVID-19. No, I don't have COVID-19. I've always had in my life allergies, and people, I hate talking about it because I feel like people, when they hear allergies, they think like in TV shows where it's like, and it's like, oh no, my allergies. It's like there's a cat around and I'm sneezing.
Well, for you,
so
it's like
cutely.
there's an entire cat in your nose.
For me, it's like I'm dying. It's like I'm allergic to everything, and I can't even think. I can't even see. I can't even breathe. I can't even function. So I actually had to leave work early today because I was feeling so terribly crappy. I took 2 showers before recording this podcast. Took like a 2-hour long nap. And we're powering through, baby, because the first week of the NFL season happened. COVID hasn't stopped us, and my allergies / sickness, I don't know if it's more than allergies at this point, is not going to stop us either. We're going to power through and talk about some football, baby. So without further ado, Joe, unless you have something else that you want to talk about, whether it be celebrity divorces or anything really at this point.
I will really say though, I was rooting for them.
Rooting for Cardi B and
Offset. Yeah, I really thought
Offset.
that would be the celebrity relationship that would kind of last. They would be that power couple that
they
would
were
kind of
like the
take
last
over the world.
It kind of makes you take a step back. If Cardi B and Offset can't survive, what marriage can survive at this point?
Do you think it's because she put out that unbelievably terrible song?
WAP?
Yes.
I'm not going to say it's because of that, but because she has been releasing terrible music for a while now, and she's overall a pretty terribly annoying person. So, hot take, a little bit of hot take there, but I hope that they can still be friends in the end.
They have a baby together.
They have a baby together.
Yeah.
I'm learning a bunch of new things about that.
Really? You did not know that? Yeah,
Nope.
they do have a baby together.
That's kind of sad. shout goes out to that baby. Let's start a GoFundMe for that baby.
I'm
sure
that baby will be set for both of our lifetimes.
That baby's fine. That baby should set up a GoFundMe for us.
Yeah, that baby's worth way more than we are.
Cardi B Jr. or whatever you are, Offset Jr., whether you're a boy or a girl. Do you know what gender it is?
I don't know.
If you're listening to this, please donate to our podcast.
Yeah.
We're talking about Cardi B Jr., baby. Please donate to our podcast. But let's just, why don't we stop beating around the bush and let's just jump straight into all of the games that happened this weekend. All 16 games, 32 teams divided by 2 is 16, right?
I could have done that way quicker than you did.
Well, I did it pretty fast because I did research beforehand.
Yeah.
So without further ado, let's jump into the games, baby. First up, the very first game of the 2020 NFL season, Joe. It was the
first game. Oh, it was the.
Yeah.
Sorry, give me a minute. It was the Texans versus the Chiefs.
Bang on, you got it, my friend. Very good. Texans at the Chiefs, the Thursday night kickoff game where the Chiefs revealed their brand new banner that was 4 miles long. That was a long banner. If we're going to get into banner talk, that's a really long banner. But anyways, it was not the most competitive of games. The Texans got off to a hot start. David Johnson looked really good. People were hating on that trade, and reasonably so. It was still a crazy trade. We'll get into DeAndre Hopkins and how he did with the Cardinals later on in the podcast. But David Johnson looked good early on. He had a good touchdown run. He was making good cuts. They got off to a 7-0 lead. Did the Houston Texans. And from there, it was pretty much only the Kansas City Chiefs because they went on to win 34-20, and it was really not even that close as the score indicates. As the Chiefs kind of just dominated on offense, and they played quite a different game than we're used to seeing from them. From them, it's usually big strikes down the field, back-breaking plays, just Patrick Mahomes launching the ball to one of his very talented targets. But this week, it seemed like the Texans very much tried to prevent that from happening, tried to prevent the deep shots. And it seemed like the Chiefs were just having their way with these short little dink and dunk passes. And then you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire balling out. The first-round rookie, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, played phenomenal. This is the second time in the last few years we've seen a rookie running back for the Kansas City Chiefs have a fantastic opening game of the season rather. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 25 carries for 138 yards and a touchdown and didn't even get involved in the passing game, and that's one of his strengths. It was one of his strengths at LSU. I mean, he makes this team scary. They're already a terrifying team. They're the best team. I had them ranked as my number 1 team in my power rankings going into this season, and then you add Clyde Edwards-Helaire and a really effective run game like they had in week 1 to that explosive pass offense with the best quarterback in football. That is terrifying. And their defense looked pretty good, actually. Their defense was maybe one of the weaknesses that they had going into the season. And I think overall, if you look at the talent on their roster, it still is the weak spot of their team. But they played fairly well. I know the Texans O-line is not great, and that I think will be an issue for them as we go along this season. But Chris Jones had his way with that offensive line. I mean, he was just wreaking havoc. And really, Frank Clark was in there too. Chris Jones and Frank Clark, people forget how good of a duo they can be on that Chiefs defensive line. And yeah, they made things very, very hard on Deshaun Watson. And as far as the Texans go, a little bit of a disappointing showing, obviously. I think they will be okay this season. I'm not going to count them out just yet. I think Deshaun Watson is really special. I think he's, like I said, going to have a tough time behind that offensive line. But I think that Houston can bounce back. They have a really tough start to the schedule as they play the Baltimore Ravens next week. Joe's Baltimore Ravens.
My Ravens.
Yeah, that's tough to play the number 1 and 2 seed from last year in the AFC playoffs. The Chiefs in week 1 and the Ravens in week 2. Joe, we'll get to your Ravens at some point in this episode. But yeah, the Chiefs kind of just asserting their dominance very early on in the 2020 NFL season. Moving on to the very first game the 1 o'clock games that were played on Sunday, and it's my Miami Dolphins falling 21-11 to the New England Patriots, the team that has tortured me my entire life. Cam Newton's now the quarterback there, and this is the game that I watched the most of. Obviously, I'm a Dolphins fan. I did watch film and tape from all of the games, really, but this is the kind of the primary game that I was watching on Sunday. And in a world where everything seems abnormal, everything is what's the word do I always say? Unprecedented. Everything is always unprecedented. It's really nice to see, a little bit of normalcy in the fact that the Dolphins were getting their butt kicked by the Patriots. It's really good to see, some things are still normal, even with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. This game was competitive, sort of, early on, but Cam Newton and this offense really established their dominance. I would say late into the first half, into the second half. Cam Newton was good in this game. He was an effective runner. They used him a lot running the football. He had 15 rushes, which, fun fact, is the most rushing attempts he's ever had in a game. 15 rushing attempts for 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. And the Pats run offense altogether had 217 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So the Dolphins were really just overmatched. They could not stop the run, which is not good if you're going to be playing this version of the Patriots, because they are really good running the ball. Cam Newton ran the ball really effectively. He had 15 rush attempts, like we said, only 19 pass attempts, but they were all super easy, quick, short, play action, just really, really easy attempts, like we've seen a lot from when Tom Brady was there. He went 15 for 19, 155 yards. And like I said, this offense, as far as passing goes, I don't think is much different than it was with Tom Brady. Obviously, the running game makes it a completely different ball game, because this team is now a power run team, and they can just really hurt you a lot on the ground, like we saw with the Baltimore Ravens last season. But as far as the passing game goes, Tom Brady in the latter years there in New England, it was all about quick passes. It was all about finding matchups. It was all about having wide open receivers. Josh McDaniels scheming receivers open, and that's very much what we saw this week with Cam Newton as well. We saw a lot of wide open receivers. The Dolphins, like I said, looked overmatched. They just couldn't keep up. The Dolphins lost Devontae Parker halfway through that game with an ankle injury. That obviously did not help against one of the best secondaries in the NFL. The Patriots secondary is still really good, really, really good. There was not a whole lot of open receivers for Fitzpatrick to hit, and Fitzmagic had 3 interceptions in this game, looking a lot more like Fitztragic than he was like Fitzmagic. At no point did it seem like Tua was going to get his shot, and I don't think he will for a while. I think it'll be a couple of weeks until Tua gets his shot. But overall, the Patriots are still relevant, people. They are still here. They are still going to be a team that's relevant, I think, late into the season. I think they'll be a playoff contender. I'm not sure if they'll make the playoffs at this point, but they're going to be around, and they're going to hang around in games, especially if they can keep this run game up, and they have a fantastic secondary, like we said. The Patriots are good. They have the greatest coach of all time. They have a really good offensive coordinator. And I thought Cam Newton as the quarterback of the Patriots is fantastically annoying already. I mean, he's getting in the face of guys. He's just making a big scene of him being really good at football, and that's fair. And if you want to, if you're a Dolphins fan and you want to take any positives from this game, your offensive line played fine. You only allowed 2 sacks, I think. I thought the offensive line would be an utter disaster. They have 2 rookies starting there, but Austin Jackson, the left tackle, played well. And the rest of the offensive line I was actually fairly impressed by, but the New England Patriots handle the Dolphins in Week 1. Moving on to the next game, it's the Eagles versus the Washington football team. And the Washington football team is officially the winningest franchise in the history of the NFL. Unless you want to count, all the other years. But now, since they've become the Washington football teams, they're 1-0. Perfect win percentage, 27-17. They defeat the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a disappointing loss for the Eagles. I mean, they had a 17-0 lead at one point. They were up 17-0 on a Washington team that a lot of people projected would be very bad this season. They still could be very bad. But after that 17-0 lead, the Washington defense took over. Shout out to my good friend Joel, who's an Eagles fan. Me and him were really talking it up, and we both picked the Philadelphia Eagles to win this week in our survivor pool. Basically, you have to pick a team, and if they win, you're good. If they lose, you're eliminated. That was the plan. I think actually we're not eliminated, but I don't know. I set it up, and I think we still get to pick next week, but I'm not sure. But the point of the story is I picked the Eagles because I was like, oh, Washington's going to be bad. I don't want to pick one of the really, really good teams. I want to save them for later in the season because you can't use a team twice. And the Eagles were up 17-0. Joel and I were really feeling ourselves. We were celebrating. And then, they allowed 8 sacks of Carson Wentz. And that was really the big story of this game. The Washington football team, their defensive line with Chase Young, the second pick in the 2020 NFL draft, they dominated. They made life miserable on Carson Wentz. And that offensive line, that is definitely going to be a problem. Like we talked about with Houston, the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. Obviously, they're missing Andre Dillard, who was going to be their starting left tackle. They're missing Brandon Brooks, who was going to be their starting guard. And then they didn't have Lane Johnson in this game, and they also didn't have Miles Sanders, their running back, in this game. So it was a tough start to the season for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then for Washington, a lot of people were kind of curious to see how Dwayne Haskins would play. I thought he was okay. I think he still is not very good, in my opinion. I don't think that he is the future. If we're talking just right now, my opinion on it, he played okay. He had 17 for 31 on pass attempts. He had 178 yards, so not all that impressive. He had 1 touchdown pass. The Washington run game and their defense was kind of what kind of created this win for that team. Dwayne Haskins, he still made some really bad throws. I tuned in at certain points to watch this game, and there was some throws where I don't know what Dwayne Haskins was doing. He doesn't impress me. He doesn't look very athletic. But for now, the Washington football team and Coach Ron Rivera gets his very first win as the coach of the Washington football team. Shout out to him. We're going to talk more about him later and his fight with cancer. Moving on to the very next game. And I got to speed these things up because I'm taking way too much time. This is going to be like a 4-hour long podcast. But it was the Chargers going into Cincinnati and playing the Bengals. Joe Burrow, the first overall pick in the draft, having his very first game in a Cincinnati Bengals uniform. And they would drop 16-13 to the Los Angeles Chargers. And my first takeaway from this game is, goodness gracious, the Chargers have the sexiest uniforms in the entire NFL. They look so good. I mean, they were wearing their white tops with the yellow pants, and man, they look nice. There's no uniform in the NFL that looks better than the Los Angeles Chargers uniform. But overall, this game was competitive. It was a fun game. Both quarterbacks were good, not great. Tyrod Taylor was 16 for 30, 208 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Joe Burrow, in his very, very first game with the Cincinnati Bengals, was 23 for 36, 193 yards, and no touchdowns and 1 interception. He did have a really, really nice touchdown run at one point. It was a really long run where he just looked way more athletic than I think a lot of people were expecting. And overall, Joe Burrow, I was quite impressed by him in this game. He didn't play phenomenal, like we talked about. He wasn't amazing. But if I'm a Bengals fan, I have no possible way of being discouraged after this game. I'm very encouraged by how Joe Burrow played after not having a real training camp, not having preseason, just having to deal with very limited practices. I thought he played well. That offensive line was not amazing. I think that he was under pressure a lot in this game. Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa looked good. And that's the one aspect I would be worried about if I'm a Bengals fan, is that offensive line. But overall, Joe Burrow looked really, really poised. I mean, he looks the part. He knows what he's doing. He's a very talented quarterback. He stays in the pocket. He makes those tough throws. He makes plays with his legs. And this game was actually really, really close. It came down to the last drive, and Joe Burrow just had a phenomenal drive, 14-play, 84-yard drive on the final drive of the game, marching his team down the field, making incredible throws, dropping dimes, and then it came down to just a few seconds left. He throws a touchdown strike to A.J. Green to put the Bengals up. They were down 3 at that point, to put them up for good probably, as there would have been very limited time. However, an offensive pass interference call made that call actually come back, and it was ruled that it was not a touchdown. And then Fat Randy Bullock, the kicker for the Cincinnati Bengals, Fat Randy came in, had a chance to tie it up, send this game to overtime, and he shanked the 31-yard field goal. There was a lot of missed kicks this week, and it's really funny because after he missed the field goal, he kind of grabs his hamstring and he's like, "Oh, my hamstring!" Like he hurt his hamstring after he kicked it, and everybody's kind of like, "No, okay, you never want to say that guy's not injured, but come on, your hamstring, really?" And then there was a thing where it was like, there's an injury report the day after the game, and it said that he injured his left hamstring, but on a picture of the game, he was holding his right hamstring. So it's like, what's the story here, Randy? What's the story here, Fat Randy?
Your lies are catching up to you.
Your lies are catching up to you.
Why do they call him Fat Randy? That's he's so mean.
Because he's hefty.
What if that's what they called him in high school and he just wanted to, maybe
that's not even what they call him. Maybe I just call him that. But I'm pretty sure I've heard Fat Randy before. Randy Bullock, because he's just a funny looking kicker. I'm sorry. And okay, yeah, we maybe shouldn't be piling on a guy that just missed a game-winning field goal, but overall, pretty entertaining game. I think both teams can leave feeling encouraged. The defensive line there for the Chargers and the defense in general played fairly well despite not having Derwin James, and Joe Burrow looked the part in his very first start. Moving on to the very next game, and Joe, we're going to get you involved in this game because it's your Baltimore Ravens.
My Ravens.
Playing in Baltimore against the Cleveland Browns. And Joe, what was your thoughts on this week 1 game? Are you still a Baltimore Ravens fan? How did it go?
I'll tell you what. Browns, more like they browned the bed.
Oh, good.
Because the Ravens crushed them.
Ooh,
38-6.
Nice.
Okay.
That was great.
How ridiculous. Lamar Jackson with 3 touchdowns to open the season. Okay?
3 touchdowns to open the season.
Okay. Oh, wow.
They brown. Do you say brown their pants or brown the bed?
Yeah, I said Browns, more like they browned the bed.
They browned the bed. That's great. Yeah, that was kind of a good summary of how this game went. I mean, the only good thing really for the Browns was that their new/old uniforms look phenomenal. More uniform talk. Love their uniforms. Very nice. But overall, that's literally the only good thing that happened to the Browns. Baltimore is very scary. Lamar Jackson, like you said, had 3 touchdowns. He also went 20 for 25 as far as passing goes.
275
passing yards. Very good, Joe. He also added in 45 rushing yards, which is pretty low for Lamar Jackson. Which is...
Yeah, I actually expected more from him this time, this time around, but, it's whatever.
It's whatever. It's fine. But, I think the fact that he only had 45 rushing yards makes them almost more scary because their running game was not all that great in this game. I mean, they didn't play bad by any means, but Lamar Jackson looked really good passing the ball, made some really good throws, and they were not playing to their strength, which is their running game, and they still just put a beating on the Cleveland Browns. Like, it wasn't really even close.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Browns just never had a shot. They scored on their opening drive, and since then, Baltimore just took them to the woodshed. Mark Andrews, my boy, who's on my fantasy team, he scored another 2 touchdowns. He's just a touchdown machine. J.K. Dobbins, the rookie running back, also scored 2 touchdowns. And Baker Mayfield, a guy that I said was going to bounce back, not off to a good start. 21 for 39, 189 passes. I feel like it's almost impossible to throw 39 passes for 189 yards. That's crazy. Almost 40 passes, and you only threw for 189 yards. Lamar Jackson had 25 passes, and he threw for 275 yards.
Oh, dear.
To put that in perspective, Baker Mayfield did not look good. Cleveland did not look good. I would be very concerned if I was a Cleveland Browns fan. I would be very concerned if I was myself because I picked them to finish second in this division, and that's not really looking all that good. It was a game full of just stupid mistakes by Cleveland. They had a missed extra point, a missed field goal. Baker had a pass that was tipped and picked off by Calais Campbell, who was a wrecker in his first game with Baltimore. What a fantastic signing! I love that signing when it happened, and it's just phenomenal. And then you had a fake punt that was just awful. The punter, who was already the least athletic guy on the field, tried to run for the first down, got hit, fumbled the ball, and the other team he just did not get where he was trying to go at all. He wasn't even close to the first down either. It was such a sad play to watch. He fumbled the ball. Nick Chubb also fumbled. And yeah, the Browns just basically shot themselves in the foot. They look like they lack continuity. They don't look like they mesh well together. Odell Beckham just still is not playing well with Cleveland. I think he had something like 13 targets and only had 3 catches. Or he had 10 targets for 3 receptions, 22 yards, which is crazy. I mean, people are starting to forget how good Odell Beckham is because he's not playing good in Cleveland. I mean, him and Baker cannot seem to connect with each other. But yeah, the Browns look bad, and the Ravens look good. Nothing's really changed so far for those two teams in the 2020 season. Moving on to the next game, and we have another division matchup. The New York Jets went into Buffalo and played the Buffalo Bills, and they lost 27-17. Josh Allen had his very, very first 300-yard passing game. He was 33 for 46, which is fairly efficient. 312 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. He also had 14 rushes for 57 yards and 1 touchdown. And the Bills pretty much did what people were expecting them to do in this game. They went in with sort of expectations that they would dismantle a bad Jets team, a team that's not well coached, a team that doesn't have nearly as much talent as Buffalo does. Buffalo is one of the more talented teams in the AFC, and I got to give Josh Allen credit. I've been very critical of Josh Allen for the entirety of this podcast, really. I still, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon yet. I don't think that he played phenomenal. I think that he still is running the ball too much. Buffalo said that they would not have him on as many design runs, but he still ran the ball 14 times, and there was a lot of design runs involved in that. He just looks so darn goofy when he's running the ball. I mean, people are like, he's such a great athlete. He's so, wow, he's like a Cam Newton. Something about him, even the way he stands in the pocket, he just carries himself in such a goofy manner. Even if he was a really good quarterback, I would have a hard time taking him seriously. I don't know what it is. Maybe somebody can tell me. I don't know if it's because he stands really flat-footed, but something about Josh Allen just rubs me the wrong way. But he played really, really well this week. The Buffalo defense played well. They got a ton of pressure on Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold, I would say overall, given the circumstances, didn't play terrible. But he's just in a bad spot. I mean, Gase is bad, and the Jets will be bad as long as he's there. Other than Jamison Crowder, who had 115 yards and a touchdown, there was not a whole lot of good takeaways from this game for the Jets. Le'Veon Bell, again, did not play well. He had 6 carries for 24 yards. Or sorry, that was Frank Gore who had 6 carries for 24 yards. Le'Veon Bell had 6 carries for 14 yards. And then he got hurt. So it's like, why don't we just get Le'Veon Bell out of New York? He's put on IR now, so he's out for 3 weeks at least. I would be very surprised if Le'Veon Bell is on this roster after the trade deadline. But the Bills also suffered a couple of key injuries. Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, 2 of their really talented linebackers, got injured. And hopefully they'll be able to return at some point in the season because they're very, very important to this Buffalo team. But Buffalo looks good. Buffalo looks like they're supposed to look. They look like they could potentially win that division. And New York is pretty much a tire fire like we expected. Moving on to the next game, and it is the Chicago Bears going into Detroit and playing the Detroit Lions. And, this game didn't look too great for the Bears there for a while as they were down 23-6 entering the fourth quarter. They were down 23-6. And then our boy, Your boy, my boy, our boy, Mitchell Trubisky, baby.
Woo!
Mitchell magic happened in the fourth quarter. We don't even need to talk about the Lions, man. Let's talk about Mitchell Trubisky, man.
My
you got anything to say about Mitchell Trubisky, my guy?
I gotta say right now, I have on my fantasy team. I have my starting quarterback right now is Pat Mahomes.
This is on the Rage Against the Machine, right?
Yes.
That's your team.
I have Mitch Trubisky as my bench, and he gave me more points than Pat Mahomes did.
Oh my goodness gracious!
4 more points.
4 more points,
and I had him on bench.
What do you have to say to that, Chiefs fans?
Oh my goodness!
Look at us now, baby. Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so I was so happy about that. I was really hyping him up, and he lived up to the hype.
It's really great. I want him to live on.
Me too.
I want him to live on for the sake of this podcast.
Yes.
I was critical of him at first. I know you've always been on his side. But I've decided it's just going to be more fun if we just all jump on the Mitchell bandwagon. We're going to ride this one out. Mitchell, he looked like he could be benched at one point. He was down 23-6, not playing all that well. But when it came to the fourth quarter, my guy stepped up. He ended up throwing 3 touchdown passes, 242 yards, 20 for 36 with 55% completion percentage. He made some really nice throw, some dime pieces in that fourth quarter. That final throw he made to go up, he made that throw to Anthony Miller, was just a gorgeous throw. My goodness, a fantastically beautiful throw. And Chiefs fans, Texans fans are always saying, haha, look at the Bears. They chose Mitch Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. Well, how about this, Patrick Mahomes? Mitch Trubisky ended week 1 with more fantasy points than you.
Yeah, 24.28. You only had 20.44.
Wow.
What do you think about that?
What do you think about that best quarterback in the NFL?
In quotes.
In quotations. What do you think about that? And how about you, Deshaun Watson? Don't think I forgot about you, Deshaun Watson. How's it feel to be 0-1? Huh? How's it feel to not have a win in the 2020 season? You know who doesn't know how that feels? Our boy Bisky.
Mitch Trubisky. That's what I'm talking about.
The Bisky boys are out. The Bisky boys are out, and we are causing a ruckus because Mitch Trubisky played phenomenal. But I guess we eventually have to get into the Lions. The Lions, they did Lions things. They were up. Matthew Stafford was playing well, like he usually does. Adrian Peterson, who's at least 37 and a half years old at this point. I don't even know. That actually might be close to his age. I was trying to over-exaggerate, but that might be close to how old he is. He had 14 carries for 93 yards. He averaged 6.6 yards per attempt, which is just absurd. I mean, the guy is old, and he just continues to keep going. You got to love to see that. And like I said, this team was up 23-6 going to the fourth quarter, and like they always do, they blew the lead. Last year, they surrendered 7 fourth-quarter leads. And they did it again. I mean, this has got to be so discouraging as a Lions fan. It's a disappointing start to the season. We saw Jamie Collins get ejected, which was stupid. Basically, Jamie Collins for the Detroit Lions. I was ready to go on this podcast and say, "Oh wow, Jamie Collins is a bonehead, and he can't succeed anywhere outside of New England." But all he did was it looked like he was trying to show the referee what had happened, that somebody was leading with their head. So he kind of put his head into the referee, and the referee just ejected him for doing that because he touched him, which is, not ideal. Maybe don't do that. But to add even more insult to injury, so like we talked about multiple times, the Detroit Lions were up 23-6 going into the fourth quarter, and then Mitchell did his thing, and they had a chance to come back. They were driving down the field. And with just a few seconds left, I believe there was 4 seconds left after the play, Matthew Stafford finds DeAndre Swift, the rookie running back, in the end zone, throws a gorgeous pass. It's in the hands of DeAndre Swift, and he drops the pass.
Oh, man.
He drops the pass. It was in his hands. He was literally in the end zone. It was a touchdown. They would have won the game. He dropped the pass. They end up losing the game. That was devastating. I mean, Lions fans, I feel for you. as a fan of a tortured franchise, I feel where you're coming from. Lions fans, Browns fans, Dolphins fans, Jets fans, I think we can all relate to each other. I feel for you. But the Bears, man, they're looking good with our boy Mitchell.
Yeah, baby.
Moving on to the big game of the season, the game of the week, the game that everybody, including myself, was really, really looking forward to, and that was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into New Orleans and playing the New Orleans Saints. And this game was hyped up for a while. Obviously, Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski making their debut in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniforms, which, if we want to talk uniforms again for the third time, those Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniforms look good. I love those uniforms.
You're so
I just
into uniforms.
I just love
Makes
uniforms.
me uncomfortable.
Sorry. I like your shirt that you're wearing as well.
Okay. Stop looking at
Back
me.
off.
Put your tongue back in your mouth.
I can't. Okay, anyways, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniforms are nice. I love them. But this game was kind of set up to be Brady versus Breeze. And both of them, honestly, did not play all that well. Brady was 23 for 36, 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. We'll talk about those interceptions. Breeze was 18 for 30, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It's crazy. When Drew Brees passes for only 160 yards, something weird happened for sure. Because that guy is just always throwing for tons of yardage. That offense is always spreading the ball around. But the Bucs looked like they lacked chemistry. They looked like a team full of new guys. They looked like a team with a new quarterback. And they looked like they were learning each other. There was a lot of miscues, a lot of bad plays. Tom Brady had 2 interceptions, which is kind of unheard of for Tom Brady to have 2 interceptions in a game. And they were just on miscommunications. Him and Mike Evans, at one point, looked like they were really getting into it. There was a miscommunication on one of the interceptions. And apparently Bruce Arians said that was on Tom Brady. Tom Brady ended up making a mistake, and people are right away jumping off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers bandwagon, and you can do that. I mean, I expected this team to get off to a slow start. I still think they'll be good. I still think they have the talent to be a good team. I think they're going to need to learn each other. They're going to need to build that chemistry. They're going to need to build that camaraderie and fix these miscommunications with reps. The only way you can really fix this stuff is just to get more reps, and they haven't had reps. They could have really used preseason football, could have really used a more normal training camp. But if you want to talk about the winning team, the New Orleans Saints, their defense is legit. They played good. They have a really, really good secondary. They got a lot of pressure on Tom Brady. They made life hard on Tom Brady. Their defense played well. Both wideouts, Mike Evans and Michael Thomas, did not play well. Mike Evans had 4 targets, 1 reception, and 2 yards. Marshawn Lattimore did a really, really good job clamping up Mike Evans. And Michael Thomas, who actually got hurt and could be out for a couple of weeks with a high ankle sprain. That's usually a nagging injury that can tend to last a little longer for some people. Hopefully it doesn't for the Saints' sake. He had 5 targets for 3 receptions and 17 yards. So if you had either of those guys on your fantasy team, that's a rough week for you. But like I said, both teams overall, I think, look sloppy. I think New Orleans just has the better defense, and that's really what helped them win this game. I expect both teams to get better. I expect both teams to be playoff contenders and potential Super Bowl contenders. And a lot of people want to get into after 1 week that, now we can officially say Belichick is better than Brady, or Belichick doesn't need Brady, or Brady needed Belichick. And let's relax for like 2 seconds on that. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went in and they played a Super Bowl contender in week 1, and we all expected them to lose. And just because the loss is a little bit more than maybe we expected, they maybe lost by more points than we expected, let's relax with that. I mean, the Patriots and Cam Newton played the Dolphins, okay? They didn't play a good team. The Dolphins are still a mess. The Dolphins could have used preseason more than anybody else. So let's not compare a loss against a Super Bowl contender to a win, and not even all that convincing of a win over a team that was tanking last year. Let's relax with the Brady versus Belichick debate for now. We're halfway done the games, and I'm going to have to really speed things up because I'm just taking.
I'm
How
gonna
long
be
have we,
on your butt.
Yeah, how long have we been? Yeah, you should just really start timing me on these games. This is getting a little out of hand.
We've been recording. This is before editing. Almost an hour.
Almost an hour.
Yeah, 56 minutes.
All right, moving on to the Raiders and Panthers. The Raiders won 34-30 over the Panthers. Both these teams have really fun offenses. I really enjoyed watching the offenses. Josh Jacobs looked awesome. He had 93 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, added 46 yards passing, or receiving rather. And Christian McCaffrey is still awesome. Had 96 yards, 2 touchdowns, had 3 receptions for 38 yards. He's still going to be a big part of that team. Robbie Anderson, the big free agent pickup for Carolina, played really good. Him and Teddy Bridgewater looked really good together. He had 6 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown. Teddy Bridgewater played well. He looks good. He didn't look like a liability to this team. I think this offense could be really fun, like I talked about earlier in earlier podcasts. But both teams, I think, could have really fun offenses. And the Raiders, I think they'll be a team that competes for a playoff spot. I don't know if they'll make a playoff spot, but I'm not sure exactly what they are. Derek Carr played fine. He was 22 for 30, 239 yards and a touchdown. He did hit 9 different receivers for at least 1 reception, which is great. I mean, spreading the ball around. But overall, both these teams are fun and exciting to see what they do in the future. Moving on to the next game, it's the Seahawks winning 38-25 over the Atlanta Falcons and their absolutely hideous uniforms. Since we're talking about uniforms this week, the Falcons uniforms make me want to puke. Still, they look bad, even on the field. Don't like them. Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited. Heck yeah, he was unlimited this week. He went 31 for 35, 322 yards and 4 touchdowns. They let that man cook this week. Finally, they let Russell Wilson get loose. They let him just air out the ball. They only ran the ball 20 times, which is kind of unprecedented for this offense. They're a run-first team. I talked about how I would love to see Russell Wilson become the focal point of this team. I would love to see him become a guy that throws the ball 30, 40 times a game, and he did it, and he looked phenomenal. Will this finally be the season where he gets his first MVP vote? It very well could be. Matt Ryan also played a crazy good game. I mean, he was 37 for 54. He had 54 attempts for 450 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he had 3 receivers go over 110 yards receiving. Calvin Ridley, Joe, you have him on your fantasy team, don't you?
I do. My goodness.
He had 9 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
He got me the most points
Holy
out of all my players.
Just the receivers alone. Julio Jones had 9 receptions for 157 yards, and then Russell Gage had 9 receptions for 114 yards. So if you would have told me going into this game that Matt Ryan has 450 yards and he has 3 receivers go over 110 yards receiving, I would have thought this was a Falcons blowout. But the Seahawks, they handled the Falcons pretty well. Jamal Adams looked good on that defense. He was all over the field, did not look bored. And if this is what the Seahawks offense looks like this season, I'm excited. I'm here for a Russell Wilson dominating season, a Russell Wilson MVP season. The Seahawks could be scary this season. Moving on to the next game, the Cardinals upsetting the 49ers 24-20. The Cardinals offense is fun. I mean, Kyler Murray is fun. He's playing so far through 1 week, and like we said, it's 1 week, so let's not overreact, but 1 week he's playing like a lot of people thought he would. He had 230 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also had 91 yards rushing on 13 carries and another touchdown. Played so good. I mean, this guy is fun. It's so crazy to watch him play too, because he's such a small man, and he runs so fast. I mean, he is just so fast, and just to see his little legs run all over the field, it's quite a sight to behold. But he's also just such an incredible passer. And I've been trying to find a secondary team to watch this season. And I talked about a few teams. I thought maybe the Broncos could be that team. I thought the Colts, we'll get to them later. They disappointed me this week. Could be potentially that team. I think the Cardinals through 1 week might have to be my secondary team. I've always liked them. Like I talked about, Larry Fitzgerald is my all-time favorite football player. Well, I wouldn't say all-time favorite, but he was my first favorite NFL player. So I've always liked the Cardinals, and they played really well this week. DeAndre Hopkins played awesome in his first game with the Arizona Cardinals. We thought maybe he would take some time to mesh with that offense. Not really, with 14 receptions for 150 yards. This Cardinals team did what I didn't think they'd be able to do. They went in and they beat up on a good 49ers team. I mean, maybe beat up is a little bit harsh, but Raheem Mostert looked good for the 49ers. He had some really, really good plays. He was on my bench in fantasy. Idiot. But he had 151 all-purpose yards. Jimmy G, I think, could really benefit from more weapons on that offense. George Kittle got hurt off of a really bad throw by Jimmy Garoppolo. I think this team could benefit from bringing in a guy like maybe Antonio Brown at some point this season, as much as I hate that. They need a little bit more weapons. Jimmy G didn't look great in this game, but the NFC West is going to be a fun division, and the Arizona Cardinals are a big part of that fun. Moving on to the team that I just talked about as a potential secondary team, the Colts. The Indianapolis Colts drop the first game of the season 27-20 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Minshew mania, baby. I'm wearing my Gardner Minshew shirt. He played really, really well in this game. I mean, he was extremely efficient like he almost always is. He only had one incompletion, 19 for 20, 173 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And this guy just finds ways to win. I don't know what it is about Gardner Minshew, but this team rallies around him. And he's such a fun player to have in the NFL. The Colts, on the other hand, really disappointed me. This is not a team you should lose to. I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars tore this roster down. They stripped this roster for parts like we saw with the Dolphins last year. And the Colts could not come up with a victory. They had Marlon Mack go down early, which was disappointing. But Phillip Rivers still made too many mistakes. I mean, I talked about how I thought he would play better behind a better offensive line. And, he played fairly well. He had 363 yards passing. He did have a touchdown, but he also threw 2 really ugly interceptions. And you cannot do that if you're Phillip Rivers. You cannot. There are no more excuses. You have weapons on the offense. You have a really good offensive line. He needs to be the guy that people think he is, and he needs to lead this team. He needs to be the final piece for this Colts team, and he did not look like the final piece for this Colts team, as this Colts team lost to a bad roster, and this is a tough loss to take in week 1, and you hope they can turn things around and become a playoff contender, but after 1 week, it looks bad, but Gardner Minshew looks good. Moving on to another division matchup, the Packers and Vikings, and Aaron Rodgers absolutely explodes in this game for 364 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 127.5 passer rating, and the Packers walk out of US Bank Stadium with a 43-34 victory over the Vikings, and I think it was more of a blowout than that score indicates. The Packers really put it to them early, and Aaron Rodgers was awesome. This could be a potential revenge season, and I am here for a potential revenge season for Aaron Rodgers. He looked great. The Vikings scored some garbage time touchdowns to make it look closer, but Aaron Rodgers had 2 absolutely gorgeous throws for touchdowns to Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who both had really, really good games. Adams had 14 receptions, 156 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You don't need much more weapons if Devontae Adams is going to play like that every week. And Valdez-Scantling also had 4 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. It'd be really nice if he could become a reliable target there for Green Bay. The Vikings offense, on the other hand, they came out slow. They picked it up late in the game when it was probably too little too late. Thielen ended up playing a pretty good game. I think there's still going to be questions about Kirk Cousins if he can raise the level of talent on this team. But the Packers looked good in this game. I mean, I'm here for an Aaron Rodgers resurgence, an Aaron Rodgers MVP season. He looked great. He was making just beautiful passes all over the field. We thought this would be a run-first team, and through 1 week, it looks like it's going to be an Aaron Rodgers first team. Moving on to the Sunday night game, and it was the Cowboys versus the Rams. And we can basically skip over this game because my Cowboys, oh boy, they're not my favorite team, but I did pick them to be quite good this season. And a lot of people had a lot of pushback on that, which was fair. I think I went a little bit too gung ho on the Cowboys this year. I thought they were going to be good. And it's 1 week, so maybe I shouldn't say that they're not good, but it's 1 week. They dropped in a disappointing game to the Los Angeles Rams, who looked good in this game, but they lost 17-20 to the Los Angeles Rams in that beautiful new stadium. And the Cowboys offense just made me sad watching that first game. I was so excited to watch them. I thought they would be a fun, exciting offense, explosive. I really expected them to come out hot, and Dak Prescott to have a big game. And they were kind of boring, honestly. Ezekiel Elliott played good, but the pass offense with all those weapons was not as good as I think they could have been. The time of possession was way in the Rams' favor. They led 35 minutes to 24 minutes for the Cowboys. And Sean McVay coached a good game. A lot of open looks, a lot of really nice screen passes for Jared Goff. Jared Goff played pretty well. Malcolm Brown, the running back there for the Los Angeles Rams, had a good game. He had 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I just think that the Cowboys were outcoached, and I hope that they can recover. They made me look bad in week 1, and obviously the game, it came down to a really controversial call there at the end. Michael Gallup seemed to have beat Jalen Ramsey on a potential game-winning strike, but it was called for offensive pass interference, and it really looked like Jalen Ramsey sold that pretty good. It didn't really look like much offensive pass interference. But, I mean, my argument is, Cowboys, you should have been up more in this game. If you're as good as I said you were, you should have been better. They also had some disappointing injuries. They lost Blake Jarwin, their tight end for the season. Leighton Vander Esch looks like he has a broken collarbone, which sucks. And they had some injuries on that offensive line as well. Lael Collins might be out for a couple more weeks. So the Cowboys, my pick for MVP, Dak Prescott, not looking all that hot. But, things can turn around. It's only week 1. Moving on to the final 2 games, the Monday night doubleheader. We're going to quickly go through these games. First, we had the Steelers winning 26-16 over the New York Giants. And overall, I was unimpressed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not going to lie. They did win fairly handily, but I think offensively, this team should have been better. I realize Big Ben's coming off an injury, and he's playing. He's older. He's coming off that injury. He did not play well to start this game. James Conner got hurt early, which hurt them. But they had Benny Snell come in and really run the ball really well. Big Ben started really slow. I mean, he was boring early. He did not play well against probably the worst secondary I've ever seen in the New York Giants. But the real story of this was the Pittsburgh defense, which was phenomenal. I picked TJ Watt as my defensive player of the year, and he made me look pretty good, even if the Cowboys didn't. You had 2 defensive linemen in this game for Pittsburgh getting interceptions. TJ Watt got one, and Cam Hayward got one. They had 3 sacks. Daniel Jones, he made some nice plays at some points. He constantly flashes potential, and he shows you what you could be. Or what he could be, rather, not what you could be. He's not a fortune teller, but he shows you what he could be, and then he just makes some boneheaded throws. I mean, he had too many mistakes. He had a fumble. He had 2 really, really bad interceptions to defensive linemen. I mean, especially that one where they were driving down the field, I believe to tie the game up, and he threw an ugly interception. He was getting hit by Bud Dupree and threw an interception to Cam Hayward. And that kind of was the nail in the coffin for the New York Giants. But the Steelers, I think their offense needs to improve. They still have potential to improve. Their defense is amazing. But Big Ben, I think, needs to be better. Moving on to the final game. We finally made it through this marathon. The final game was the Titans versus Broncos. This game was at 10:30 at night on Monday, which I'm not going to lie, I didn't stay up and watch most of this game. That's ridiculous. The doubleheader, I think, is a dumb idea. I don't know why they have to have that game. But it was a 10:30 game. Basically, in this game, it was a fairly uneventful game. Steven Gostkowski missed 4 kicks, 3 field goals, and 1 extra point. He did not make Joe's top 5 kickers list, and for good reason.
No way.
My goodness gracious. But he ended up banging through the game winner. After missing 4 kicks, he hit the game winner I think he took his socks off. So he was kicking with socks on. Then he took them off and hit the game winner. So there you go. But overall, the Broncos didn't play terrible, I guess. Drew Lock made some throws. Also, he missed on a couple deep throws, which would be a little concerning. But he was without Cortland Sutton, the number one receiver, and KJ Hamler, the rookie receiver. But Noah Fant had a good game, which is great because he's on my fantasy team. And yeah, like I said, Locke played well. Tannehill played fine. Derrick Henry had himself another good game. He had 31 rushes for 116 yards. Joe, is he on your fantasy team?
Yeah, he is.
Derrick Henry.
Oh, wait, no. Derrick Henry?
I think he is on your fantasy team.
Is there someone else whose last name is Derrick? No, I have Derrick Henry. Yeah, you're right.
His last name is Derrick. Yeah, Derrick Henry. King Henry had another good game. And the Titans edged out the Broncos. And that wraps up our game recap. And now we're going to go into a new segment that I'm calling Stock Up, Stock Down. So basically what this new segment is we're gonna look at the stocks around the NFL and see whose stock is up and whose stock is down. And what better way to kind of say what the segment is than just to start the segment. And my first stock up, and this is a stock that is skyrocketing now, and that's the Cardinals hype train. After the very first week of the season, they looked good. They had a really, really solid upset win over the 49ers. So their hype train is at an all-time high. This is one you maybe want to sell if you're talking stocks. And stock down, the Buccaneers hype train. A lot of hype going into that. A lot of people jumping off the bandwagon now. So their stock is down. And stock up, speaking of a player that was on there, Tom Brady, his former team and his former city, stock up Boston sports fandom, which, wow, they've had it so bad. I'm so glad that they can have a stock up. But Boston, we had the Celtics beating my Raptors in Game 7 and moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then you had the Patriots beating my Dolphins.
Oh, no.
So a rough week.
Are you
but
sad?
a really on my side. Inside, yes. But their stock is very much up, like it always is there in Boston. And stock down, my sports fandom. Like I said, the Raptors lost, which put me into a dark place. The Dolphins lost, which was not as dark. And then, like I said earlier on the podcast, I picked the Eagles in my survivor pool. They lost. And then the Cowboys, who was like the team that I was hyping up all off season, they lost and made me look bad. So my stock is kind of at an all-time low. It's kind of like Blockbuster stock at this point.
Oh, no.
It's like it's probably not going up. It's like you don't want to invest in it. It's not looking good. But stock up, Joe. Your chances of buying a Lamar Jackson jersey. I would say,
I might actually.
I would say that stock is up right now.
Yeah, I think so.
You picked a good team. It's almost kind
I'm
of
not a bandwagon.
It's almost kind of unfair.
I'm not hopping on the bandwagon.
It seems like you're hopping on the bandwagon.
And I know a lot of people think that I'm just hopping on the bandwagon.
Getting a lot of hate mail.
I have been getting a lot of hate mail. I'll read some of it next week.
A lot of death threats.
Yeah. But no, I like the Ravens. Listen, I'm so unbiased. Here's why I like the Ravens. I think their jerseys look cool. I think they've always looked cool.
Okay. And you also like that they win.
I like their colors.
Yeah, okay.
And birds. I'm also a big fan of birds.
Okay. Well, it's good to know that your fandom is a stock up for sure.
Yeah, I know.
But stock down, the mental health of Cleveland Browns fans. Oh my goodness gracious. Speaking of the Ravens, they really put a damper on the Cleveland Browns. It was a brutal loss. I mean, it's hard to go and take any positives away. I mean, you had David Njoku who made a couple of really, really nice grabs, and then he got hurt, and he's going to be out a couple of weeks now. It's just always bad there in Cleveland, and it's just, even when it seems like it's getting better, it's not. So if you have a Cleveland Browns fan as a friend, make sure you check on them. Say, hey, buddy, are you okay? And just be with them because it's tough. Their stock is very much plummeting at this point. But on the other side of things, stock up, Russell Wilson's chances of getting an MVP vote. That stock is very much up as he played phenomenal in his very first game of the season. Like we said, he put a beat down on that secondary there in Atlanta. And then stock down, my MVP prediction, Dak Prescott did not play nearly as well. 25 for 39, 266 yards, which is fine, I guess. But, I mean, he didn't come out flying like I really wanted him to. I really wanted the Cowboys to come out and just tear up the Rams, and everybody's gonna be like, Joe, look at you, you're so smart. But instead, they didn't. But stock up. The Bisky Boys stock is very much up.
Yeah, it is.
Bisky Boys stock is rising. We're Apple stock right now. We're Amazon stock. We are well, okay, maybe that's not a good comparison because we were down, but now we're going up.
Yeah.
Now we're going up. I can't think of anything because I don't play the stonks. But listen. The Bisky Boys, their stock is going up, and going down is the Jaguars hashtag tank for Trevor stock. That stock is falling because Minshew will not let it happen. Minshew is not going to let this team tank, despite completely tearing their roster apart. Minshew and his stock is up. Minshew mania. Like I said, I'm wearing my Gardner Minshew shirt. That stock is very much on the rise. Minshew continues to be entertaining, continues to be fun, and continues to win games for Jacksonville, even when they maybe don't deserve to win games. And stock down. You know, we've talked crap about baseball on this podcast and how that's such a dumb league and a sport that I don't enjoy. Coming at you again, MLB. I'm going to come at another sports league. This is one that I actually enjoy. Stock down. The NBA playoff basketball.
Why?
NBA playoff basketball. They scheduled a 1 o'clock game on Sunday, which lines perfectly up with football games. What a stupid decision that was. You scheduled a game at 1 o'clock to compete with NFL football. NFL football's back. I think that the NBA ratings are going to feel it. I mean, NBA has never been even close to as successful rating-wise as football. And listen, football's coming for you, baby. Usually NBA doesn't have to deal with it quite as much as because they're gone at this point. But, you know, now they're lined up right perfectly with the football season. So the NBA's ratings, their stock is going down. And then another stock down. We're just going to go with a couple of negative ones here. Stock down. The hope that the Patriots would just disappear into irrelevancy, that stock is plummeting pretty good. They're going to be relevant. They're going to be here, whether or not they're 14-2 or 12-4. I doubt that, but they're going to be around. And stock down. This is a predictive stock. I think that Cam Newton's likability stock is going down. I'm making a prediction now. By the end of the season, Cam Newton will go from being a guy that everybody was rooting for to a guy that everybody kind of hates. He played my Dolphins in week 1, and he played well, and he let the Dolphins know about it. People are gonna be annoyed with him because he's gonna make plays and he's gonna get in people's face. And I think that, oh yeah, we're rooting for Cam Newton, that's gonna wear off after a while. So that stock is heading down. A couple more, the final two stock ups. Aaron Rodgers, hashtag revenge, capital S, capital Z, capital N, season, baby. Revenge season. He's mad that they drafted a quarterback in the first round, and he's letting us know about it. I'm here for an MVP season from Aaron Rodgers. I talked about it on my power rankings on my Instagram. I'm really looking forward to Aaron Rodgers potentially having MVP season. And one final huge stock up. Ron Rivera being a badass. That stock was already very high, and it's even higher. I mean, the guy has cancer, and he coached a football game. He stood on the sidelines for hours. He had to get an IV at halftime, and Dwayne Haskins had to do the halftime speech because Ron Rivera didn't have enough energy to do it for him. So just shout out to Ron Rivera for being an inspiration, an incredible person. And I've always liked Ron Rivera, and he's very well liked, and this certainly does not hurt that whatsoever. But that kind of wraps up, stock down of week 1 of the NFL season. And as we get closer to the end of the podcast, this one's going to be a marathon of a podcast. I'm going to give away a new award that we're doing on this podcast. You know, a lot of people want to do, this is my favorite player of the week. This is the AFC offensive player of the week, the NFC defensive player of the week. This is the guy that had all the stats. This is the guy that had, 4 touchdowns, 300 yards. That's not what we're going to do here on the Average Joe Football Show. No. We're going to give away the Average Joe of the week. And you might ask yourself, what is the Average Joe of the week? What does that even mean, Average Joe of the week? Why would you ever want to be the Average Joe of the week? Well, the Average Joe of the week it's not going to be the guys that get all the recognition, okay? It's not going to be, as much as I love Aaron Rodgers, it's not going to be him. It's not going to be Mr. Unlimited. It's not going to be guys like that. It's going to be guys that, they did what they were asked to do. They didn't do any more, any less. They did what they were asked to do. They didn't mess it up, but they did just enough to get the big fat W. And this week, the average Joe of the week goes to quarterback Tyrod Taylor of the Los Angeles Chargers. He had 16 for 30 passing, so just over 50%. Perfect. 208 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, though. 6 rushes for 7 yards, and 1 big fat W. You got to get the win if you want to be average Joe of the week, and that's exactly what Tyrod Taylor did. Congratulations. You are the very first average Joe of the week. All right, why don't we wrap things up real quick with going over some of the games that are going to go down next week in week 2. Week 1 was a good time. Looking forward to week 2. We start off this Thursday. Tonight's game, if you're listening to this on Thursday when it's uploaded, tonight's game is between the Bengals and Browns. Really looking forward to that game. We see 2 former number 1 overall picks, Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield, going against each other. And I got the Bengals winning 23-20, and that's my upset of the week, if you can even call it an upset. I mean, the Browns are kind of a mess, but I'm going to call it my upset of the week. And then you move on to the other games. We have Buffalo at Miami. Give me Buffalo. I don't think Miami is anywhere near to as talented as Buffalo is right now. Then you have Carolina at Tampa Bay. Give me Tampa Bay for a bounce-back game. I could see a big game out of Tampa Bay to kind of shut up the haters. Then you have Jacksonville going into Tennessee. Give me Tennessee in that game. Minshew magic kind of wears off in week 2. Then you have the Giants going into Soldier Field and playing the Chicago Bears. Give me Mitch Trubisky, baby. He's going to get back-to-back wins. Keep Foles on the bench, baby. Bisky gives him the business in week 2. And then we have the Atlanta Falcons going into Dallas. And I'm sticking with my boys, the boys, we them boys. They're going to take the win against Atlanta. I'm
gross.
I'm not that good. Sorry.
That was embarrassing.
I have a lot of emotional stock invested in the Cowboys this year. And they're going to take the Atlanta Falcons in week 2. And then Detroit is going to, I think, lose to Green Bay in week 2. Aaron Rodgers is playing awesome. Minnesota goes into Indianapolis. And Minnesota gets the win, in my opinion. Indy, I'm already maybe jumping off the bandwagon potentially. And you have San Francisco at the Jets. That one's a 49ers victory. Don't have to get too deep into that. You have the Rams visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Rams are playing good football right now. Sean McVay has this team playing well. He's scheming up some good offense for Jared Goff. I think they go into Philadelphia and they beat the Eagles. And then Denver at Pittsburgh. Give me Pittsburgh. I think their defense is playing outrageously good. Could give Drew Lock problems. And then the 4 o'clock games, you have Washington going into Arizona. I was tempted to pick Washington as my upset just because of that defensive line. But I'm going to take Arizona because I believe in Kyler Murray and I want Arizona to win. And then Baltimore against Houston. Give me Baltimore. Kansas City at the Chargers. I'll take Kansas City. And then my lock of the week, the Sunday night game. And we're going to come up with a punishment. At some point, we're going to come up with... Every week, I'm going to have one lock of the week. And it has to be a good lock. It has to be... I can't pick... the Ravens to beat the Giants. They're not playing this week, but say they were. I can't pick that game. I have to pick a fairly competitive game. And my lock of the week, I'm taking Seattle over New England. I think that they're gonna give New England some problems. I think that New England might be exposed, that they're maybe not as good as people are saying they are after week 1. But yeah, if I don't get this right, tune into our Instagram. We're gonna come up with some sort of punishment at some point. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, right, Joe?
I believe so.
Have you come up with anything
Something
yet?
silly crazy?
Something silly crazy. Something random, Yeah, but Seattle, I think, is going to win at home against New England. And then the Monday night game, give me New Orleans over Las Vegas. I'll update you on how these picks went next week. But that kind of wraps things up. This was a long podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was the first podcast that we're doing with actual NFL games to talk about. So it's going to be a lot of experimenting this season. We're not sure exactly yet how we're going to do things. Next week's format of the show might be a little bit different. Not quite sure, but it's going to be a kind of a feeling out process. If you enjoy the show, let me know. Please leave me a 5-star rating, or leave us rather. It's us, Joe. Leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you share the podcast with your friends. If you have friends that like football, or if you have friends that just like hearing two guys talk out of their butt for an hour and a half, make sure that you spread it around. Share the podcast. Also, I'm doing a giveaway on my Instagram. If you are listening to this podcast the day after this podcast goes up, Friday is going to be the last day to enter the giveaway. It's a Madden 21 giveaway. Go over to my Instagram. Basically, all you have to do is follow my Instagram, follow Mic'd Up Podcast. Make sure you check out their podcast as well, Mic'd Up Podcasting. Make sure you check them out. Follow them, like the post, and comment which console you want it on, and tag 3 friends. And you can have a chance to win a free copy of Madden 21. So make sure you check that out. And follow us on all social medias at _Average Joe Show. Follow Joe on social medias. On Instagram, it's at Joe _Thiessen. And on Twitter, it's at Thiessen _Joe. Like I said, if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a good review and a rating. It's going to be a fun NFL season. Week 1 is in the books, and we will catch you guys on the next one.